Hey guys, welcome to the blog today. So I was reading some information. I mean, we're all in this together. We're all working from home. And I was looking at this article. It was a very interesting article. It took me back to my old networking days. It was talking about collaboration tools, and while we're all working from home and we're trying to get work accomplished, we have this influx of tools that we're using, things like Slack, things like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google, Dropbox, Box, all of these tools that you know when I was a few years ago, when I was, in the SOC and Security Operations Center, you try to lock all that down. You didn't want anybody doing anything in those spaces, just mainly because of the insecure nature of those platforms. But collaborations tools happened. They came in. You had approvals, right? You had people. You had your company approved, whether it be Dropbox or Box. You had your company approve different collaboration applications that you can use, like Slack and or whatever. Usually they're paid for, and usually they're controlled by your IT teams, right? Your IT teams can do and implement policies, corporate policies based on the usage of those individual platforms. Well, now it's the wild, wild west. Now we're, for those organizations that weren't really prepared to move to this online, I'm sorry, this work from home space, this remote working space, you're getting the free version of a lot of stuff, right? And so IT teams that were not prepared to allow these types of collaboration tools in their environment, and they're now thrust into the situation where now they have to figure out what's best, and in the meantime work still has to get done. So I mean, any of these types of collaboration tools, especially the freer versions, as you guys know about Zoom, if you don't lock them down, if you don't take certain steps in order to ensure that there's some security stuff added to security things that are that your organization, the policies that your organization, depending on that information, if you don't take those steps, you don't properly vet them, there's millions of potential vulnerabilities out there. And then if a bad actor gets into it, into the company version, so to speak, and they're impersonating some sort of employee, then you have all types of things that they can get in, and they can do reconnaissance. They'll be able to learn about your organization. They'll be able to launch potentially a business email compromise scheme that gets somebody in accounting or somebody in accounts payable to send money to them as thinking that they're a vendor or whatever, because you have these platforms that we inherently trust, even though we shouldn't. We should always look at it with an eye towards skepticism. Anything that's open to everybody is bound to be um, insecure in some way, or found to be taken advantage of by folks, even internal threat type of threat actors and people. Back in the day, I keep saying that, and it wasn't that long ago, but back in the day, you had data leak prevention tools that will prevent somebody from, uploading sensitive information to email and sending it out. I remember I was in charge of DLP, on when my first go around in corporate America in 2012, and it was just more so locking everything down to having those rules that will prevent PII from going out, or being uploaded to email, and we draft those policies to make sure the tool is actually working correctly. Data leak prevention tools don't exist when you're starting to think about the cloud applications, right? And right now, the cloud access security brokers, were CASBs or what they're called. Some people do them, some people don't, right? And now that becomes a situation where you're responding in the fly, right? And when you don't have a plan, and you're trying to get a hold of some of this information now that potentially can go out in these unstructured environments, then you're like, okay, what do we do? And so now there's a rush to implement some of these technologies. Even that is risky as well. So as you go through these full cloud, hybrid cloud, these collaboration tools, this is all outside of the network. As an old school network person, I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? How can we ensure that everything that's going on is correct when there is no network? Everybody's at home, so you're dealing with home networks, of course, unless they're going into the VPN and then they're on the corporate network. But many of organizations have cloud applications that you just go to an interface. You go to the web interface and you actually able to, you know, use those tools, and especially with things like, like Slack and everything like that. So you don't really need the network, right? And so I find myself trying to find a good hybrid solution in my brain to get the grasp around, okay, these are cloud applications, but what do we necessarily need to do for our employees to protect them, because they're you're out there. And so some of the things that employees can do, or the IT teams can do, is implement multi-factor authentication on everything, even if you're not having a corporate you're not on a corporate instance of one of these collaboration tools. Most of them have the capability to implement two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. And so that means if your account is compromised, again, it gives you a level of protection. They would actually have to compromise your device or whatever you're using in that multi-factor, whether it be an application or text message or whatever. They'll have to compromise both of those in order to get access to more sensitive data. And of course, user awareness. I mean, I do these blog posts essentially just to make users aware of everything and what's going on out there, and potentially how they can be compromised just by utilizing some of these technology in these tools. In shadow IT. I mean, you know WhatsApp and you know Facebook, right? We know this, and so watch what you're saying and what you're doing. I mean, this article talks about people having, from a compliance perspective, people, taking polls about what the death toll is going to be for COVID-19 locally. And that's just not, from HR perspective, I mean, just, compliance perspective. It's like, these are certain things that, based on the fact that people are now working from home, that they don't have that structured environment where they're going into an environment, they have to put on that professional hat. It's, oh, we're at home and it's free. So be careful of the things that you say and what you do, and then still report those things that may be inappropriate. I mean, you get sexual harassment. I mean, I've had a lot of things go on in my past, so we'll do it like that. Just shadow IT, or things like WhatsApp or whatever. It could be shadow IT. Shadow IT meaning it's non-approved applications or programs that a user could download on their phone or download on their corporate PC. Again, when we're not in the corporate environment, I'm sorry, when we're going into work, usually those devices are pretty locked down, and you don't get admin rights. You can't download programs. But if you weren't prepared and you just went out to Best Buy and bought a whole bunch of laptops because now your employees are remote, there's a step that probably wasn't taken in regards to locking those devices down where they couldn't download programs, and now they're downloading potential programs that will expose them. So be mindful of that. And then from an organizational perspective, try to get into some data classification, right? Use those inherent watermarks or password protecting documents that are sensitive. Be careful of the PII that you're sharing, or how you're sharing it, or who you're sharing it with, especially in these open applications. You don't want to do that unless you fully understand what you can and cannot do. And that's for the organization, or for you to ask questions about, what can I share, what can I share. So those are some tips for you guys today. Hopefully you got something out of it, and stay tuned for our random thought. All right, thanks, bye. When was the last time you've given in person security awareness training to your employees? Nothing against the annual computer based training that many organizations provide. Oftentimes, the difference between a computer based training and an in person training is that the actual employees can ask questions, and it makes it more meaningful to them in their day to day activities. So, if you're interested in learning more about the trainings that the cybersecurity of Law Firm of Texas provides, please reach out to us. guys, a random thought for today. So this is something that you guys hear me rant about often. Well, okay, you hear me rant about it again today. It's about children's privacy. As a mother of two teenagers, it's always important that, and I've always had these questions, but I saw that Google, um, they're being sued. There's a father of two elementary students out in California, I think it is. That are suing the Google for violations or potential violations of COPPA, the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, and the Illinois Biometric Information Protection Act. And essentially, it's just basically because G Suite for Education and Chromebooks are doing some things that I guess this parent did not like. And there's a lot of things that happen that I don't necessarily like when it comes to ed tech. But G Suite for Education evidently instructs the students to speak into the Chromebook microphone and look into the camera in order to capture biometric data. And what the problem, of course, is you're supposed to, when you're collecting information about a child, get parental consent. There's no parental consent, and then and there's nothing in regards to what the purpose is for them collecting this data for these students and what they're using it for. And so it's just going to be interesting, and you have to watch this space when of children's privacy. And usually the FTC, there's no private right of action under the COPPA for this father to actually sue, even though he's actually suing under the act. That's usually the FTC's job to enforce that particular the Children's Privacy Act. So it'll be interesting to see what the court does with that. I mean, it's similar to some of the things that we've seen about HIPAA there in state courts. Really, you've seen some cases where individuals are using the fact that an organization wasn't in compliance with HIPAA to sue for common law breach of privacy type of thing. So it the laws are need to catch up with what's really going on out there and the uptick of individuals actually caring or actually knowing, not necessarily, I wouldn't say caring, knowing exactly what these companies have been doing with data, even their children's data. So interesting to watch this case. All right, guys, thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Guys, thanks again for listening to the Breach Whisperer blog, sponsored by the cybersecurity law firm of Texas. Don't forget to like this post and subscribe to our channel so you can get updates of when we post new things on our channel. In addition, spread the word for me, right? Let's get out there and tell a friend, and so they can all become paranoid cybersecurity and privacy people. Don't forget, if you would like to connect with me on socials, you can connect with me on Twitter at Mary N. Cheney. Use my middle initial always. For my nonprofit, Minorities in Cybersecurity, that is at Mike Leadership, and Instagram and Facebook at MN Cheney Law. And you can find me on LinkedIn just by searching for my name. So if you're interested, connect with me. Thanks again. And just remember, awareness equals knowledge.